beginning of the 1960s, Ford was losing ground. Ford was getting its butt kicked by Chevrolet and General Motors on the racetrack and in the sales room. Henry Ford II, this is his family empire, right? So he says, you know, what am I going to do? And he has this idea. He needs a sexy sports car that can stand up to the Corvettes. He needs a race team that can stand up to General Motors, and maybe a race team that can spread the gospel of Ford Motor Company around the country. So he has this idea to go over and buy Ferrari. They send this team over to try to make this deal. It goes very sour. And what happens from there, you have a rivalry between these two colossal figures. Enzo Ferrari in Italy, Henry Ford II in Dearborn. Henry Ford II, Le Mans was very important to him for a very specific reason. This is the dawn of globalism, okay? He had an idea to relaunch and recreate his company as a global brand. And there was one race in the world that had the clout where if you won it, people in Russia would know it, people in Italy would know it, people in South America would know it. That was the 24 Hours of Le Mans. When Henry Ford comes up with this idea to build this racing car, he tells his guys, you're going to build the fastest, most technologically advanced racing sports car in the history of the world. So he puts together this team. These guys go to work. They start mapping out this car on paper before they ever start building it. And they realize quickly that this is an automobile that's going to have to travel at aircraft speeds. One of the first things they're going to have to figure out is how to keep it from taking flight, literally. The original team had a guy named Eric Broadley.
And Eric Broadley had debuted at Le Mans a car called the Lola, and it was, in fact, a mid-engine monocoque prototype with a big Ford V8 in it. So it was pretty much exactly the template for what Ford was looking for its new Ford GT. What they decided to do was they essentially went to Broadley, they hired Broadley to head the engineering efforts for the new Ford GT, and they used two Lola GTs as sort of the test mules for the project. In 1964, the first year, the cars were being built in England, they were being engineered in England, they were being developed in England, and they had the British team was running them, the operational racing side of the team, and that was John Wyer, who was quite well known because he had run the Aston Martin team that had won Le Mans in '59, where one of the drivers had in fact been Carroll Shelby. So there was some sort of synergy going on there. And in fact, not a single Ford GT finished any race in the 1964 season. Ford wanted Wyer to run the cars at Nassau. There was a special kind of one-off sort of race down there towards the end of the year. And he didn't want to go, but he was forced into going, and the cars showed up there and they did terribly again. One of them crashed and the other one blew up, and Ford executives were pretty unhappy. As a result, they took the program away from Wyer and they decided to give it instead to Carroll Shelby and Shelby American, which had been successfully running the Cobras.
There's a lot of designing, testing, and trial runs behind every new innovation or new performance record. How do I know? My name's Carroll Shelby, and performance is my business. Here's something else that we're excited about. It's this new Ford GT. It was designed and built by Ford engineers as kind of a laboratory on wheels to test new ideas and prove Ford's capabilities in open competition. We've been given the job of testing this new car and racing internationally.
Now, an important figure has emerged by this point in the Shelby organization. His name was Ken Miles. He began work at Shelby as a competition manager and a mechanic. He was a Brit. He had fought in World War II as a tank commander, and he had done a tremendous amount of development on the GT40.
Ken was everything to the program. Without him, I'm not sure where we would have been. A lot of guys had seat time, but none like Ken, because Ken was right at the shop, so he was always there, always available.
Ford did a lot of testing, so there was an opportunity for drivers like Andretti to get seat time. He would go do all the testing he could do because he just wanted more time in the cars.
The Ford project was something that was a lot of value to me as far as honing my skills in road racing, especially in the 60s when I was just pretty much a newcomer in the business. Then to be able to win with them, Bruce McLaren, we won the first victory in Sebring and raced at Le Mans and Daytona. And again, along the way, guys like myself benefited tremendously from that.
And so when they used to run, out there on the west side in Venice and then at LAX, and so they would go out to Riverside or up to Willow Springs International Raceway, both of them maybe an hour or so away. I mean, they ran out there constantly. They were constantly testing. Miles was integral in developing the Cobras and the Cobra Daytona Coupe. He did the initial test in the Cobra Daytona Coupe with Peter Brock. So naturally, when Shelby got the program for the Ford GT at the end of '64, beginning of '65, Miles was the guy who did the major development.
Working with Ken was a blessing in disguise because, for one, I learned a hell of a lot. I knew nothing about racing until I met Ken Miles. I mean, I could barely spell race car, let alone operate one. Working with him in those days was absolutely magic. I mean, he was brilliant. I mean, he was a great engineer, apart from being a great race driver. I think you can attribute a lot of Ken Miles's engineering background to why Carroll did so well. The way he tested cars, the information he brought back. And remember, in those days, there was no oscillograph machines and all that stuff to read off of. It was all pencil and paper. Even though it required a lot more testing, because a lot of it did turn out to be guesswork, Ken was really the prime mover on getting the cars to work well.
Ken Miles is suddenly a focal figure because he raced the car at Daytona in 1966 and he won. He raced the car at Sebring in 1966 and he won. So suddenly this guy who nobody had ever heard of before this, he was just a mechanic and a competition manager, is suddenly in the lead car and thought of as a guy who could win. And if he had won the 24 Hours of Le Mans, Ken Miles would have won Daytona, Sebring, and Le Mans in 1966. That had never happened, the Triple Crown, it had never happened. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure going into this race on him and on the whole team.
It's going to be a hell of a race. A hell of a race. And most of the people think, hey, Ferrari, they're going to come out on top. We're going to be down at the bottom. That never happened. Well, everybody was thinking Ford will never make it. They're nothing compared to Ferrari, for crying out loud. Because Ferrari would go into every race they raced, and they wound up winning the race.
So the ultimate showdown is Le Mans in 1966. Ford shows up with a slew of cars. Ferrari shows up with a slew of cars, only now Henry Ford II flies in and he himself is going to attend this race.
I think there was huge pressure to win. 65 had been dipping the toe in the water type effort, but 66 there was a real determination to win. At the time it was certainly the biggest motor racing effort I'd ever been part of or had ever seen. It was a huge effort, right from the top corporates to the junior members of the team. There was a real determination to succeed and to beat Ferrari.
He does this dramatic thing where he goes around to all the top guys, a few top guys who are running this program, and he gives them a little card. It says, "You better win, HF2, Henry Ford II." With Henry Ford II, he's the Grand Marshal of the race. He's the honorary Grand Marshal of the race. So at the beginning in 1966, he's standing there with the flag, and he waves the flag to start the race. Off the cars go. The crowds are going nuts, and it's quite clear by midnight that the Fords are going to win. It's a race of attrition. A lot of the Ferraris have dropped out of the race. The Fords are winning. Somebody hands Carroll Shelby a document. It's a race report showing the lap times that Ken Miles is racing. And he's breaking the lap record. He's driving faster than he was instructed to drive.
The first lap, Ken Miles has to pit because the door doesn't close properly. So he loses some time, goes much faster than he's supposed to be going, and sets a lap record very early on. Dan Gurney is in another one of the Shelby American cars with Jerry Grant. And so Gurney goes out and then sets a lap record of his own. And in the third Shelby American car, McLaren and Amon, and they are going very slowly. McLaren's fledgling Formula One team was sponsored primarily by Firestone, and Firestone did not have a good intermediate tire.
I suspect that these tyres hadn't been tested at that sort of speed before. They were an intermediate tyre from memory, which means they were sort of a half a wet tyre, half a dry tyre. After a few laps, Bruce had started the race and he came in with a tread had come off one of the tyres. So they put another set on and he went out again, and exactly the same thing happened.
And so they were losing terrible amounts of time because the tires were not good for the conditions. They fell back several laps.
And then he came back in again and told me to get in the car while he went and had a bit of a chat. It was a very difficult situation because here we are contracted to Firestone, but no way were we going to finish the race if we, or do anything in the race if we had continued to have tyre problems. So it was either we put the car onto Goodyear's or withdrew from the race.
Finally, Bruce McLaren made the command decision to switch to Goodyear's, and he tells Chris Amon,
he said, we've got nothing to lose, give it hell. And so we pretty much did, and from being well behind, we were actually in the lead.
Gurney and Miles were going to be the two rabbits. They're the two cars that had to go out and try and break the Ferraris. So Ken needed to get up front as fast as he could to help Gurney out, even though Dan really didn't need too much help because he was extremely quick, Dan was. But he did get up and into second spot, and it was first and second for quite some time with Gurney and Miles.
all three cars are driving much faster than Ford execs want them to. And at a certain point, the Ferraris all disappear. And most of the other Fords, they're either retired or they're just not as fast as the Shelby American cars. You know, they're pulling ahead. And Leo Beebe's having a bit of a conniption because he's got this note card saying, you better win. And he's seeing his three drivers are way out in front of everybody. And here they are, they're kind of like racing. You know, this is not the way it's supposed to go. And it becomes even clearer when, during the middle of the night, when Gurney is sleeping and Jerry Grant's out in the car, and he pits with the water temperature gauge is pegged. It's overheated, the head gaskets failed. So now there are the two Shelby American cars are left. You know, the Miles, Denny Hulme car, and the Chris Amon, Bruce McLaren car. And what Leo Beebe does not want to happen is to them start racing against each other, because he doesn't want any more failures. He needs them to finish the race.
It was more a case of winning, and I guess at Le Mans, being a 24-hour race, you had to be a bit conservative. I don't recall any sort of clear team orders, certainly in the first 3 quarters of the race. When it came down to sort of 5-6 hours to go, the decision was made to slow the cars down.
Ford is winning. Ken Miles' car is way out front. Henry Ford II comes flying down from his Chateau hotel in a helicopter, lands and comes into the pits and huddles with Shelby and the other Ford guys. And they're like, wow, this is amazing, we're gonna win. This is historical. This has never been done. An American manufacturer is gonna win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. All over the world, people are gonna say, Ford is the best car. They won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. They beat Ferrari. In India, people are gonna go buy Ford cars. In Italy, in Enzo Ferrari's home country, people are gonna go buy Ford cars because of this race. It's a great triumph. History in the making. So they come up with this idea, this PR plan. They come up with an idea to have 3 Ford racing cars cross the finish line at the same time to create a photo finish, because they think this will be brilliant public relations and it'll make a great cover for all the car magazines around the world.
And so he orders them to slow down to lap times somewhere around the order of 4 minutes. They had qualified at a lap times of about 3:30. So that's 30 seconds off the pace. I mean, it's like, you know, if you're like 5 seconds off the pace, that's slow. To be 30 seconds off the pace is like glacial. And I mean, I remember talking to Chris Amon, and he said it took him, you know, like several laps just to slow down.
And at that point, I remember we were leading, Bruce and I were leading, and Bruce was actually in the car, and the Miles' home car was running second, and the sign went out saying ease, or, you know, back off as it were, or slow down a bit. The instructions with ease at the time was really to hold station. Bruce slowed down several seconds a lap, as did the other cars, except for the Miles home car, which maintained its pace, and within a matter of several laps, Ken Miles had actually caught and passed Bruce. And that caused, from memory, a bit of consternation within the whole Ford setup. Everything became very confusing because the decision was made, these guys won't do what they're told. Basically, we're going to create a dead heat situation, so there's no point in racing each other.
The next time Ken came in, they said the Ford had talked to the officials and they can make it a dead heat. So they're both, you know, they come in, rather than first and second, they come back in through together, which everyone's quite happy at that point because they were going to both be winners.
So that became the strategy, really, for the last 3 or 4 hours. That was all fine, but in the background, the organisers, the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, said we've never had a dead heat at Le Mans and we're not going to.
During one of the final, I think it was the final driver change, where Eamon gets out for McLaren to get in the car, and where Denny Hulme gets out for Ken Miles to get in the car. That's when Ken Miles is told that he should slow down and allow Bruce McLaren to catch up so they can cross the line together. And he's not happy about it.
When they told Ken that he had to slow down, he was really upset about it. I mean, he was agitated and he wasn't quite sure what to do or what to say. But he did slow down as per instructions, because Ken was definitely a team player.
The ACO informs Ford that they will not allow a dead heat finish. Ford gets this news. Well, it's not like they can radio the guys and tell them, hey, things have changed. We can't have a dead heat anymore. Go to plan B. Well, they didn't have a plan B.
It got a little tense after that. I think Ford wanted to hear more like Ford wins and Ford wins again, which you can understand to a certain extent. But telling that to a driver is a little different. When we heard about it in the pits, myself and the crew, especially Granny Collins, he was my number one. We were really upset about it.
So they cross the finish line together. There's only one problem. A steward for the race comes up and he says, I'm sorry, this is a 24-hour race. The car that has traveled the furthest will win.
So according to the ACO's theory, if the cars cross the line together, which in fact they would do, Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon would be awarded the victory by virtue of the fact that they had covered 8 more meters, or like 20, 25 more feet than the Ken Miles, Denny Hulme car.
This is another major project, and this is a very interesting one, and I hope that you will understand what I say. Whether the Ford Motor Company intended this to be the result or not, I don't know. But what happened was, 2 cars crossed the line side by side. If you look at the rules of the race, it is laid down that if there is a dead heat across the finishing line, the car that started farthest back on the starting line must have covered the greatest distance. 2 cars crossed the line together. Number 2 was farther back on the starting line than number 1, so number 2 has covered the greatest distance. So number 2 becomes the winner. This is a remarkable result, and I congratulate the French, and I think this is the most splendidly thought out set of rules for any race in the world. And I think we're all lucky to be here to see such a race.
And because we started one place behind the other car, we would have travelled something like 5 or 8 yards or something further in the race than the other car. So totally unbeknown to us, the organisers made that decision, and whether it was a dead heat or not, we were actually going to win the race.
Well, when the race ended, we tried to get Ken's car into the winner's circle, and the frogs, the French officials were just going, no, you understand, you've got to go over that direction. We need McLaren and Amon's car. We couldn't understand what was happening, nor could Ken. He was still in the car. He couldn't understand what was going on, because as far as he was concerned, they finished together.
So meanwhile, Ken Miles gets out of his car. He's just won this historic race. He's just made history for Ford Motor Company in this magnificent GT40 race car, and he's informed that he came in second. And he's devastated.
And Ken was absolutely crushed. I mean, he just couldn't believe it, because he would have obviously won the big 3.
Even Chris Amon didn't know what was going on. He wasn't even sure who won the race when it ended.
Yeah, it was a very confusing end to the race, I have to say. And it wasn't really until after we'd crossed the finish line, and suddenly it was announced that we were the winners, and the Miles home car was second. And so really the first I knew that we'd won the race was after the race had finished.
At the finish, they had a couple of sawhorses with some plywood, and that's where the guys stood. They kind of made a half-assed victory stand out of it, and that's where all that took place. Ken told his crew chief, Charlie Agapoo, I think we've been fucked.
The two crews that were up with the cars at the winner's circle really had no idea what was going on at that point. We both thought we'd won the race. Max thought his car won. I thought my car won because that was what the plan was. Things got definitely a little heated between the two teams after that, especially with Max and myself, because he was the crew chief on Bruce's car and I was the crew chief on Ken's car.
And here it was, Ford's walking away with the win, and the pits are full of tension, and Shelby looked kind of, I think the quote was something, he looked kind of gray. Shelby was quite unhappy with the way things worked out. Miles was a personal friend of his, and he later said that it was a mistake to let the race end the way it did.
So at that point, but he calmed down and then he went up and congratulated him, with his big duffel coat like he always wore. And everyone calmed down at that point. But a few bottles of champagne, it all smoothed over,
I don't think there's really anybody left who can say exactly, who was involved in the decision, who can say exactly what happened. And there are a lot of stories about, a lot of people have different opinions about what happened. And at this point, maybe it's impossible to say exactly how things went down. I think what's clear is that Ford saw an opportunity to have a public relations coup by having a dead heat finish between its top two drivers. So that would look spectacular, and that would be a great photo and a great photo op and a great story. And at the same time, staging the finish would prevent Miles and McLaren from racing each other to the finish. It would seem like a kind of a perfect solution to what could be a thorny situation.
Ken was a really great guy. I got along well with him. He did tell me one thing I've never forgotten. We were sitting up there talking. He said, Dave, he said, I'd rather die in a race car than being eaten up by cancer. I never forgot that.
2 months later, Miles is testing a new car at Riverside in California. He's at the end of his day. They're going to build this car. He's testing it to go back to Le Mans the following year. And all of a sudden, the car comes apart. There's a crash, and Miles is killed in August 1966, 2 months after Le Mans. And he becomes a sort of unsung hero of American motor racing. A lot of people watching this may not know who Ken Miles is, and this is the reason why. Because he had the Triple Crown of racing taken away from him in this bizarre fashion, this bizarre story, the bizarre end to this terrific moment for American racing. You could say that this is the most important victory in all the history of American motor racing.
I felt wonderful about us winning 1, 2, and 3 in '66, but Ken Miles, we made a horrible decision in saying the 3 cars come over exactly together. It was good politically for Ford, so I couldn't argue with it. Besides that, I worked for Ford, and I'm not going to go against Henry Ford.
There has never, ever been a program. You can talk about the $300 million Ferrari budget or the McLaren budgets in Formula One now. We had no restrictions.
Ford was, the 900-pound gorilla in that they had resources nobody else had and were spending, at unprecedented levels. They couldn't hire anybody they wanted, but they were able to hire a lot of the guys they wanted.
Whatever it cost, it was okay. He was going to spend the money. He just wanted to make sure the car that was built would capture the imagination of the world and it would win Le Mans.
It was huge for me because I was still only 22. I was nearly 23. It was a huge event, and to be standing up there with Henry Ford and winning Le Mans, I was sort of almost pinching myself, I think, to see if it was real. Really, Le Mans became the biggest win that I had. A huge occasion for me to stand up on that podium. As I said, I was pinching myself a bit.
Ferrari would say, you get in, you drive, and you win. That's what they always said to their drivers. And we beat the shit out of them, I'll tell you. Pardon the language.